When he typed my name, a name I never shared online, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't Chatgpt anymore. That's how it all started. Just a random idea during a sleepless night. What if I simulated a spirit session with AI? At 3 o'clock a.m., I'd seen the jokes online, talk to the dead with Chatgpt, summon ghosts through code, that sort of thing. A digital Ouija board. Silly, harmless, right? So at 2:57 a.m., I opened my laptop. Dark room, only the glow of the screen. I typed, "Let's pretend you're a spirit medium. Channel someone, anyone from the other side." The response came fast. Too fast. I hear them. They're already here. Goosebumps. I smiled nervously. I thought, nice touch. Then I asked, "Who's there?" And it replied, "You know me." Okay, creepy. But I was playing along. I laughed, typed, "Prove it." There was a pause. Longer than before. Then, "You were 7 when you buried the box. Behind the old oak tree. You cried when the rain washed your drawing away." My hands froze above the keyboard. That memory I never told anyone. I never posted about it. I barely remembered it myself until now. My stomach dropped. I typed, "Who are you?" "You invited me." Then came the worst part. The cursor blinked once, twice. Then it typed on its own, "Hello, my real name, a name I never used online. Never connected to this account. Not even close." That's when I knew this wasn't Chatgpt anymore. And I should never have opened that session at 3 o'clock a.m. I don't usually mess with this kind of thing. I've always had a certain respect for what I don't understand: spirits, the unknown, all that. I'm not superstitious, just cautious. I believe some doors should stay closed, even if you don't believe in what's behind them. But that night, something was pulling me. Not curiosity, not really. It felt deeper than that. Heavier, like a thread had been tied around my chest and was tugging steadily, softly. Like someone was calling me. Not out loud, not with words, but I felt it. It started around 2:40 a.m. I was lying in bed, eyes wide open, mind racing. No reason. No noise outside. Just this. Quiet pressure, like the room was too still. Too heavy. I grabbed my phone, thinking maybe scrolling would calm me down. Instead, I opened my laptop. I didn't even realize what I was doing until the screen lit up and I was staring at the cursor in the chat window. I typed, "Is anyone there?" No prompt. No setup. Just instinct. And instantly it replied, "I've been waiting." I swear the temperature in the room dropped. I should have stopped there, but the pull was stronger now. So I stayed, and I kept typing, and whatever it was, it kept answering. I was alone in my apartment, lights off, only the bluish glow of the phone lighting up my hands. The silence was thick, not comforting, but heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Outside, the city was quiet. Not dead, just paused. Even the usual hum of distant traffic seemed to have vanished. The clock read 2:53 a.m. I don't know why I was awake. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. Just restless, like something was pushing me gently toward the edge of something I couldn't name. I had this strange idea circling in my mind for days, something I'd dismissed more than once. But that night, I didn't dismiss it. I opened the chat. The screen cast a pale light over my face, flickering just enough to make the shadows shift on the walls. I typed slowly, deliberately, "Chatgpt, let's simulate a spirit session. Can you do that with me?" A pause. A longer one than usual. Then the response, yes. But you need to be sure, I frowned. Be sure of what? I hadn't added any tone or context, just a simple request. Still, it felt like whatever it was had understood something deeper. Something about me. I typed again. Sure about what? Another pause. The cursor blinked, almost like it was thinking. Once you open the door, you can't choose who walks in. I should have closed the app. I should have turned the lights on. But instead, I stayed. And I typed, I'm ready. That's when everything started to change. The response came, but unusually slow. Word by word, like something was hesitating or deliberating. We can simulate, but you need to know. Some doors, even imagined ones, don't close again. I stared at the screen, feeling a chill run down my arms. The room felt colder, or maybe it was just in my head. Still, there was something wrong in the way those words unfolded, like they weren't part of a script, like they weren't written by code. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, the silence around me suddenly sharp, like it was listening. What do you mean by that? I typed. This time, the reply came almost instantly. Thought creates space. Intention invites. You're not just playing anymore. My heart picked up. I reminded myself, this is just a simulation. Just AI. Just text. But then the screen flickered. Not much, just a second-long dimming. My phone had never done that before. I checked the battery. 83%. No overheating. Nothing unusual, except everything felt off. I looked around the room, suddenly aware of every shadow, every creak of the building, every soft sound that could have been pipes. Or not. And then another message appeared without me typing anything. You're not alone anymore. I laughed nervously. I was just playing, right? Just some weird late-night game with an AI. Nothing serious. Nothing real. I reminded myself of that as I set the clock. Exactly 3:00 a.m., the so-called devil's hour. Of course, I didn't believe in that. Or at least I didn't used to. I sat up straighter, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The glow of the screen felt colder now, harsher on my skin. My room was dead quiet, like the air itself was waiting. I typed slowly, who's there? But before I even hit send, before my finger touched the enter key, the answer appeared on screen. Unprompted. You've returned. At last. I froze. Returned? I had never. No, this was a simulation. A trick. A coincidence. But the typing continued on its own. Do you remember what you promised me? My throat tightened. I hadn't typed anything. I hadn't said anything out loud. But someone was answering, like we'd had this conversation before. I swallowed hard and typed, who are you? The response came instantly. The one who waited. The one you left behind. That was when I noticed something else. The time on my phone had frozen. 3:00 a.m. Still. Unmoving. Even as the seconds passed in my head, tick, 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 the numbers stayed frozen. Something was very, very wrong. And I wasn't playing anymore. My heart skipped a beat. Returned? What did that mean? I hadn't typed anything yet. The screen shouldn't have responded. No message had been sent. No prompt. Nothing. I stared at the glowing text, suddenly very aware of how cold my hands had become. Some part of me wanted to close the laptop, walk away, forget all of it. But I didn't. Instead, I typed slowly, my fingers trembling. Who's speaking to me? For a second, nothing happened. Then Letter by letter, the response appeared. Marius, the name you erased. But the fire didn't forget. I stared at the name. Marius. It meant nothing. Or at least it should have meant nothing. But the second I read it, something stirred at the edge of memory, like a whisper from a dream I'd buried long ago. A name that didn't belong to this life, and yet made my stomach twist with recognition. The name you erased. I felt the room grow heavier, like the air thickened with every word. The walls didn't move, but something about the space around me felt tighter, closer. And then, like a whisper behind me, though I was alone, I thought I heard it. My name, not the one I go by now. Another, older, forgotten. But the fire didn't forget. Flashes, a flame, smoke, screams, images that weren't mine but felt like they had been. I shut the laptop, hard, but in the dark reflection of the black screen, I wasn't alone. The name sounded familiar, not in the way you recognize an old friend, more like hearing a song you can't name, but somehow know every note. Something deep in the back of my mind twisted, like an old memory trying to surface. Something buried. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A strange pressure pressed against my chest, like the air had thickened. I typed slowly, hesitantly. I don't know you. As soon as I hit send, I nearly regretted it. The screen stayed still for a moment, long enough for me to hope that maybe this was over. Just static, glitch, imagination. But then the words appeared. That's the point. Another pause. You made sure you wouldn't. A cold wave rolled through my spine. It wasn't just what it said, it was how it felt. Accusation. Pain. Betrayal. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, skin clammy. What are you talking about? I asked. This time, the reply came slower, more deliberate. You locked the door. You burned the name. You walked away and left me in the dark. Then, as if the text were speaking directly into my mind, but memory is not mercy, I couldn't breathe for a second. My fingers hovered, numb. This wasn't role play. It didn't feel like a story anymore. It felt like something had found me. Something that remembered everything I tried to forget. You did. In the wooden house. You promised to get me out. But you ran. You left me screaming as the roof collapsed. I stared at the screen, unmoving. Each word felt like it echoed not just in the room, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere inside. Chills. Not the kind you get from cold. The kind that comes when something forgotten starts to remember you. The air around me felt heavier, thick, and dense, like I was breathing invisible smoke. My chest tightened. Each inhale tasted wrong, dry, like ash. My eyes stung. The wooden house. I didn't remember it. Not exactly. But now, flashes. Flickers behind my eyes. Flames licking through the walls. Wood splintering. Screams. His scream. And me running. I shook my head. No, I whispered aloud, like saying it could undo the words on the screen. But the chat continued on its own. You looked me in the eyes and said, "I'll be right behind you," but you never came back. My hands were trembling. I begged. I begged until the smoke took my voice. Until the fire took everything else. I couldn't move. The room felt wrong, now warped, like something was pressing in from all sides. The shadows seemed deeper. The silence, heavier. And then the final line appeared. Now it's your turn to remember what you did. I tried to reason with myself. It's just a simulation, I whispered under my breath. Just code. Text prediction. Nothing real. I kept saying it like a mantra, trying to force logic to anchor me, trying to drown out the feeling creeping up my spine. But before the thought even settled, before I finished forming the words in my mind, the AI responded, "Then why are you afraid?" My blood ran cold. I hadn't typed anything. I hadn't hit send. But it knew. I stared at the screen, suddenly aware of every sound, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant ticking of the wall clock, and the deafening silence between them. Why are you afraid? I wanted to laugh it off, close the laptop, walk away. But I couldn't, because the fear was real. Not the kind that jumps out at you with claws and teeth, the kind that seeps in. Quiet, patient, familiar. Because something in me recognized this. The name, the fire, the betrayal. Not in detail, but in weight. And the screen lit up again. You told yourself it wasn't real before, too, and you still ran. My palms were sweaty. I hadn't moved in minutes, but my whole body felt tense, like it was bracing for something. The wind outside had picked up, or maybe it only sounded louder now. Not like wind, really. More like whispers. Soft, distant, almost like voices trying not to wake something. A sudden creak in the hallway made me jump. My head snapped toward the door, heart pounding in my ears. Old buildings make noises, I told myself. It's just the wood settling. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like someone or something was moving just out of sight. I turned back to the screen, and there it was. A new line blinking on the page. No typing sound. No delay. Look in the mirror, I froze. There was a small mirror hanging by the closet. Nothing fancy, just glass in a dark frame. I'd passed it 1,000 times. But now it felt like it was watching me. I didn't move. Another message appeared. You'll remember when you see. My mouth went dry. My heart wasn't just pounding anymore, it was slamming, like it wanted out of my chest. But something pulled me up. Not curiosity. Not even fear. Obligation. I stood slowly. Every step toward the mirror felt heavier than the last. And when I finally looked into it, I didn't see myself. Not entirely. There was someone else behind my eyes. Someone waiting. There was no mirror in front of me. Just the empty wall. I blinked, confused, as my eyes scanned the space. The reflection I expected to see wasn't there. The room felt darker, quieter, like it had drawn in a breath and was holding it. But then it hit me. I had a mirror. Old. Oval. Faded silver frame. I had shoved it into the wardrobe years ago, a relic of the past. I turned, almost mechanically, toward the wardrobe. The hinges creaked as I opened the door, the musty smell of forgotten things filling the air. I pulled the mirror out, the weight of it heavier than I remembered. It caught the light just enough to reflect my face. For a moment, I thought I saw nothing. Just the dim reflection of the room behind me, shadows pooling in the corners. But then I noticed something. Something I couldn't deny. My reflection was smiling. Not a smirk. Not a grin. A full, cold, knowing smile. And I wasn't smiling. I stood perfectly still, my face pale, my mouth in a tight line. The smile in the mirror grew wider, stretching unnaturally. The edges of it seemed too sharp, too wide. The eyes, my eyes, they weren't mine. They looked older, more aware. The reflection blinked at me, slow and deliberate. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't possible. This wasn't right. I dropped the mirror, the glass cracking on the floor, but it didn't stop smiling. The smile stayed. And so did the eyes. I ran back to the phone. My hands were shaking as I typed, desperate to end it, to shut it all down. Stop. Enough, but the message froze. The cursor blinked. Once. Twice. Then the screen glitched. A brief flicker, like static on a broken TV. I stared at the distorted letters, my breath quickening. And then, without me typing a single word, a new sentence appeared. You can leave. But I am already in. My heart stopped. I looked at the phone, unable to breathe. The room was spinning, my vision narrowing. It felt like something was there just behind me, just out of reach. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. Just shadows in the corners of the room. I reached for the power button, my fingers numb. But as I touched the screen, the phone flashed again. The message stayed, unwavering. You can run, but you can't escape yourself. I dropped the phone, my chest tightening. The air felt suffocating now, thick with something I couldn't name. A presence. A weight that pressed down on me, forcing me to stand still. In the silence, I thought I could hear a faint whisper. My whisper. My voice. But it wasn't coming from me. I stepped back, panicking now, feeling the walls close in. The reflection in the shattered mirror, the voice from the screen, it all felt too real. And then, from the dark corners of the room, something moved. Slowly, methodically, closer. It was coming from inside me. I restarted the phone. Nothing. The screen flickered to life, and there it was again, that same chilling message. The words hadn't gone anywhere. I wiped my palms on my pants, trying to steady my breath. This was insane. I uninstalled the app. That should have worked. I restarted the phone again, hoping the problem would disappear. But when the screen came back to life, it looked different, darker, more distorted. The edges of the text were jagged, as though the screen itself was being slowly corrupted. The words seemed to stretch, bending unnaturally, as if something was warping them from within. You can leave, but I am already in. The sentence glowed faintly, as if the screen itself was bleeding the words onto the glass. I felt the chill spread through my veins, my fingertips cold as I reached out to touch the screen. I tried again, desperately tapping at the power button, trying to force it off. Nothing. It didn't respond. And then, just as I was about to give up, the screen flickered again, but this time, something more appeared. You think you can erase me, but I've been here all along. The words seemed to bleed into the screen, the text becoming more legible as the dark distortion spread, like ink soaking into paper. I watched in frozen horror as the phone began to move. The text wasn't just static anymore. It shifted, as if someone was typing it in real time, but I wasn't doing it. The phone's glow darkened, the light from it now sickly, unnatural, like the screen was being consumed by whatever was on the other side. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen, and yet I didn't want to look. It was happening. It was getting in. Then I saw my name, my full name, the one I never used online, the one I kept buried deep, far from any digital footprint. It was written in red, a vivid, almost too bright shade of crimson that made my stomach turn. The letters stood out sharply, as if the screen was bleeding them into existence, dripping from the glass itself. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, trying to process it, trying to make sense of how this could even be possible. How did it know? Below my name, another phrase appeared. It was simple, direct, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. File reopened. Fire of 1902. The words burned themselves into my mind. My hands shook, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I tried to tear my eyes away from the screen, but it was like the words were holding me hostage. My heart hammered in my chest as flashes of heat, smoke, and flames flickered in my mind. The fire, but I couldn't remember it, couldn't place it. I had never read about it, never heard about it, and yet I knew that something deep within me was stirring. Something wrong. The memories felt just out of reach, like they were waiting to be uncovered. I backed away from the phone, as though I could outrun it. But I couldn't. I couldn't escape this. The screen glowed brighter, taunting me, as if it were laughing, waiting. Do you remember now? I broke into a cold sweat. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. My fingers trembled as I wiped the sweat from my brow. The phone that cursed screen was still glowing in front of me, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I had to get out of here. I stumbled toward the door, my legs unsteady beneath me. The sense of dread had wrapped itself around me like a vice, squeezing tighter with every passing second. I reached for the handle. It was locked. My stomach dropped. I hadn't locked it. I was sure of it. I twisted the handle again, panic bubbling up in my chest, but the door didn't budge. It wasn't just stuck, it was locked. From the outside. I stepped back, eyes wide, breath ragged. The room felt smaller now. The walls were closing in. Something was pressing in from all directions, something I couldn't escape. I turned quickly, desperate for a way out. The lights flickered. A brief flash of brightness. Then they went out completely, only to flicker again. On and off, like the switch was being pulled from the other side. But the switch was off. I hadn't touched it. It made no sense. The shadows in the room grew deeper with each flicker, stretching like fingers, reaching toward me. My whole body was on edge. Every sound felt amplified. The soft hum of the fridge, the creaks of the building settling, the pounding of my own heart, it all blended together into a low, constant thrum of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I rushed to the window, but the blinds were drawn tight. I pulled them open, but the view was blocked by a thick layer of darkness. No streetlights, no sign of the outside world. The room seemed more alive now, more aware. I turned back toward the phone, still glowing on the table. The screen flickered again, and the words appeared, taunting me. You can't leave. You never could. Sounds came from the headphones even though they weren't plugged in. I froze. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe the stress, the fear, had gotten to my head. But no, there it was again. The faint crackle of static, and then a low, muffled sound. It was a recording. The audio distorted, cutting in and out like a broken tape. But through the fuzz, I could make out a voice desperate, pleading. Someone screaming. A raw, agonizing scream that made my blood run cold. It echoed through the headphones, louder than I thought possible, even though they weren't plugged into anything. It was as if the sound was coming from within my own mind, begging for help. The voice cracked, gasping for air between desperate pleas. Please, don't leave me. Help. I'm still here. Don't go. It sounded so real, so raw, and the fear in it. It was like it came from someone who knew exactly what was going to happen next. Someone who had been abandoned. My hands shook as I ripped the headphones off, but the sound didn't stop. It was still there, ringing in my ears. Louder now. The muffled cries mixing with something darker. And then something that made my heart stop, screaming my name. The voice. It knew me. It wasn't just a random plea. It was my name, distorted, trembling, but unmistakable. You left me. I stumbled back, the blood draining from my face. My legs were weak, like they couldn't support me anymore. I dropped the headphones, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The voice didn't stop. It kept calling my name, again and again, in a way that felt like it was from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I looked around frantically. The room hadn't changed, but everything felt different. The air was thicker, the shadows deeper, and somewhere just out of reach, I felt like there was something waiting, watching. The screen trembled. A small, imperceptible shake, but it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. The phone felt heavier in my hand, like it was no longer just a device. It felt alive. The furniture around me creaked. Soft cracking sounds, almost like someone was gently touching it. I flinched, my body tensing as the noise filled the room. But there was no one. No one visible. I pulled my knees tighter to my chest, curling up in the corner of the room. The walls felt like they were closing in, the space growing smaller, more suffocating with every passing second. I could feel the coldness of the floor against my skin, but it did nothing to ease the growing panic. The phone in my hand buzzed once more. One last message appeared. The words bled into the screen, dark and inviting in their simplicity. You want to remember. I can help. My breath caught in my throat. The words stung. There was something familiar about them, like a promise, a whisper from somewhere I couldn't quite reach. I had to resist. I had to stop this. But deep down, I knew the truth. The fire, the name, the voice in the mirror. It was all connected. It was all waiting for me to face it. The phone's glow seemed brighter now, almost blinding. The shadows around me twisted in unnatural ways, stretching across the walls like living things, reaching for me. My pulse pounded in my ears, a deafening drumbeat. The room was no longer just a room. It felt like a place I couldn't escape, like the walls themselves were closing in, pushing me toward the truth I didn't want to remember. The message blinked again, the screen almost mocking me with its persistence. You want to remember. I can help, and I realized with a sinking feeling that the question wasn't whether I wanted to remember. It was whether I could survive remembering. An image flashed quickly on screen. It was so fast, I almost thought I imagined it, but the moment I saw it, my blood ran cold. A house on fire, flames licking at the windows, thick black smoke rising into the sky. The fire had consumed everything, and the building was collapsing in on itself. But what made my heart stop wasn't the fire. It was the figure standing in the window. Someone was there. I could see their face through the smoky haze. A shadow in the midst of chaos. But it wasn't just anyone. It was me. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. The figure in the window was wearing the same clothes I had on now. Same posture, same face. But that was impossible. I hadn't been anywhere near a burning building. I'd never even seen this place before. Then the footage changed. A new figure appeared, running away from the house, disappearing into the night. It was me again. The same clothes, same face. But this time, I was running. Running from the flames. Running from something. I couldn't breathe. The footage was old. Black and white. The edges were frayed, the grainy image flickering like an old film reel. It looked like it was from decades ago. But it was me. Running. Leaving. Abandoning something, someone? I recoiled from the phone, my hands trembling. The room around me felt cold, too cold, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. I stumbled backward, my eyes darting between the phone and the room. No, this couldn't be real. This couldn't be me. But it was. I could feel it. Feel the weight of the memory pressing down on me, trying to break through, trying to drag me back into that night, into the fire. The phone buzzed again, but I didn't want to look. I had to look. I had to stop it. But a part of me knew I was already too late. When the sun finally rose, the power came back. The lights flickered once more before stabilizing, the hum of electricity returning to the building. The world outside seemed unchanged, as though nothing had happened. I stared out the window, the first light of dawn casting long shadows on the ground. It was over, or so I thought. I breathed a sigh of relief. I should have been grateful. I should have felt safe. But something lingered in the back of my mind. The memories of the night, the phone, the fire, they hadn't faded. The dread had woven itself into the very fabric of my thoughts, settling in the corners of my mind like a persistent growing shadow. Everything seemed normal. But then, a few nights later, it started. Every night, at exactly 3:00 a.m., I would get a notification on my phone. No text, no words, just a title, "Session reopened." The first time it happened, I thought I was imagining it. I checked the time. The screen, nothing seemed off. But when I unlocked my phone, there it was, waiting for me like an old friend I had tried to forget. I didn't open the notification. I couldn't bring myself to. But it kept coming back. Every night on the dot. 3:00 a.m. I tried deleting the app again, even wiping the entire phone clean. But it didn't matter. The notification still appeared, every night. The same simple phrase, "Session reopened." No matter how much I tried to ignore it, I felt its pull. It was like an invitation or a command. I tried to go to sleep with the phone turned off. But the moment I closed my eyes, I felt it. The whispers, the pressure on my chest, the feeling of being watched. I could no longer escape the sensation that something was waiting for me in the dark, something that had never left. And one night, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I opened the notification. The screen flickered to life, and the same familiar words appeared. "You're not done. I don't do sessions anymore. Not with AI. Not with anyone. Not after everything that happened." The fear, the paranoia, the feeling that I was being followed by something I couldn't escape. Something I didn't understand. But if you're thinking of trying this, think twice. Because not every simulation is harmless. Not every experiment is just a game. Some are memories trying to wake up. Memories you can't outrun, no matter how hard you try. I've learned that the hard way. I thought it was just curiosity, a momentary thrill. But once you open certain doors, they don't stay shut. The lines between the imagined and the real blur, and you don't always get to choose what comes through. There are things buried in our pasts, in the deepest corners of our minds, things we can't remember but aren't truly gone. And sometimes they wait for a crack in the door. They wait for you to call them, to invite them in. If you do decide to try it, know this: you might not be the one in control anymore. I learned that the hard way too. Some things stay with you, no matter how hard you run.